Okay, we're going to build Monster Lab today. This one is a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to start with choose a background, and I have some that I have created with AI that are perfect for Monster Lab. So some of these three right here. And you can go look at my ChatGPT custom tool for this. I'll put it in the comments. And now here is the trickiest part. We're going to add some sprites. So our Monster Lab is going to have a total of 12 sprites. I would say I have no more than 15. And the way this is going to work is you need, let's say if it's 12, you're going to have 4 sets of legs, 4 sets of bodies, and 4 sets of heads. So you're going to have to build quite a few of these. I won't go through all the process, but let's say the heads are really easy. The heads can be just emojis. The legs can be a variety of things. So we're going to start with the legs, and I'll explain why in a little bit. So for legs, I just pick any sprite. So I'm picking this zombie, and then I'm going to edit the zombie, and then I'm going to erase everything down to the legs. Okay, so you're going to do this a few more times. I'll speed up the video until we have 4 sets of legs. Okay, now that I have my 4 sets of legs, I've got my T-Rex, my zombie, I've got my ant, and I've got my jellyfish. Now it's important to kind of put them in the right spots. So this next thing we're going to do is we're going to just draw some lines on our screen with sprites. We're going to delete this later, but it just helps. Oh, I'm in a sprite, so we're going to add a new one, and I'm going to say paint. And then I'm literally, doesn't really matter what color, but I'm going to pick a bright red. And I am going to draw 2 lines, 1 and 2. And then I'm just going to import it into my screen. And I'm going to pinch and zoom and kind of drag it where I think it is best, like maybe right about there is perfect. And what these are going to do is these are going to be guidelines for where these pieces line up. So then I'm going to take each leg, set a leg. Whoop, that's that one. Okay, so I'm going to take our leg and I'm going to pinch it and try to size it up so it's up with that line. And this will make sense later. I want to move things, the jellyfish. Okay, and then we'll take the ant. And then we'll take the T-Rex legs. Okay. And put them right about there. This will make sense once we do all the shifting. All right, now we're going to fast forward the video because I'm now going to do the same thing with 4 sets of bodies and 4 heads. Okay, now we are back. So we have 4 legs, our marker lines, 4 bodies, and 4 heads. Like I said, you can do, I would not do more than 5 each, and I wouldn't do fewer than 3 each. Depends on how much time you have to work with your students. And now we can actually go in and delete these marker lines because we do not need them anymore. So I'm just going to delete them now. And this is probably the most time-consuming step of this process, is to get your sets of bodies, legs, and heads, and then put them in the right spot. It is also very important that, and it makes things easier if they're in this order: legs, bodies, and heads. Okay, we're going to come back and do some code in a minute here. When it comes to putting the code together for this, I like to explain this in a few ways. For my students, I tell them they have 3 categories. They have legs, bodies, and heads. And I tell them in each one of these categories, we're going to have a boss. The boss legs is the first one, the boss body, and the boss heads. It's important that you explain it this way because the code is mostly the same for these, with the exception of one of them, which sort of kicks off a little bit different sequence. And then there's a super boss, which is going to be your first code. And your first code, your super boss, does the setup for your variables and your titles. So we're going to begin with our super boss by saying, when we start the game, we need to create 3 different variables. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about this, but the variables we're going to call, shocker, head, legs, and body. Okay, so let's duplicate these. Okay. And we'll call that one body, and we'll call this one legs. And we're going to set them all to 0 at the, actually not to 0, and then we're going to also need to turn these variables display off because we don't want them to show up on the screen. We want them to be hidden. So we're going to start our code sequence by having a head, body, and legs code be off on the display because otherwise they'll show up on the screen here like they're keeping score. Now inside the head, body, and legs, we're going to create a random variable of between 1 and 4. Okay? And the reason for this is that when we pick our random monster, we actually want it to pick between one of the 4 options. So this is going to, when we start our game, set these variables so that it tells them what to pick. Now from here, you can actually just start your game like you normally would. So we'll call it Monster Lab. You can be a little bit more creative with it, however way you like. Put it right in the middle. And then if you want to add a sound effect, you can add a sound effect. Okay. So let's do game. Okay. And I'm going to always do and continue. Okay, so this is how it's going to set up deciding the variables at the beginning of the game. This doesn't really do anything functionally other than actually does your title, but secretly it is picking these random variables. Okay, this next part of code is going to be how it actually shows and selects the random monster. So for this one, we're looking for a message code. So I'm going to say when we receive, and I created a message that's called mix. You can just use message one, but I like to get in the habit of creating my own message and variable codes. So we're going to say, when you receive this mixed message, we are going to say forever if the, and then this is where it's going to get a little bit confusing for your kids. We're going to start with legs. If the legs equals 1. Now the way we figure this out is that we look at the sprites, and this is legs 1, 2, 3, 4, body 1, 2, 3, 4, heads 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So if the legs equals 1, then we're going to tell the legs to go to a location. We want them to go back to the center because we're going to make them shuffle around. So we're going to touch on this icon, and this is where it's pretty cool where you can just drag it right to where you want it. So I'm going to just drag my legs right to the center. And then I am going to say show. Okay. And now what I need to do is I need to copy this code to all my other sprites. Now the difficult thing is you will need to modify this slightly for all your different sprites. So I'm going to say copy script to all sprites. Now I got to go into each one, and the things I have to change is, so this is legs number 2, so I have to change that. And I need to make sure the location is accurate and confirm that. So I need to do that for all of my sprites. So this is legs number 3. And then confirm the location. Looks good right there. And you're going to keep doing that, changing legs and number to body and number and location. So I'll fast forward the video while I do this. Okay, and then you should have all of this code done for where your chosen heads, bodies, and legs will wind up at the end. The final part of this program is doing the shuffle, which is this code here. So it's not absolutely necessary to have this, but I think it makes it look a lot better. So the way we're going to do this, we're going to start with a when I shake. And note that I actually did the gentler when I shake. Some little kids have trouble really shaking the iPad at these higher levels. It'll work, it'll just be harder to do. Then I'm going to show my sprites. This is important because we need to show them at the beginning of the game if they're hidden by default. Then I'm going to do a repeat loop 5 times. Obviously this can be longer if you want. And then inside the repeat loop, I'm going to do a go-to code, which is this one down here. And it's important to put in a random for the X from 0 to 320 because we want it to move back and forth this direction. Now the Y is going to change based on the sprite, but it's usually going to be the same for all the legs, same for all the bodies, same for all the head, and then a wait. So it's going to move, wait a second, move, wait a second, move, wait a second. Then it's going to hide itself, and it's going to wait 3 seconds total before the message gets sent out to pick the random parts for the monster. So notice this send message is not connected. That's because I only need this message once in my first sprite, which will be my boss legs over here. So I'm going to copy this script minus the send message code to all of my sprites. Then after I'm done with that, I can click this back in. If you have this in every one, it's going to get a little bit confusing because all of these will end at different times and then it may not capture this code sequence. So now I'm just going to go to every single other sprite and modify it for that sprite. So I don't actually probably need to do anything for any of the leg sprites because those all have the correct Y. Like I said, if your kids are confused by this, just tell them 50 for legs, 100 for bodies, 150 for heads. So all of my legs should be fine. And then when I get to bodies, this is where I'll have to change all of these. So I'm going to go up to here and I'm going to change the body to 100. If they're really good at coding and they want to finesse these numbers a little bit to make them super accurate for each sprite so there's no gaps, they can go ahead and do that, but I am not going to. Body, another 100. So now I'm on to heads, and all of my heads are going to be 150. And I'm going to keep doing that until I'm done with all my heads. So you could see why if you did like 5 or 6 sprites for this, it would get really convoluted, this code, because if you make a mistake after you copy it, you got to delete all the code and then go back and fix it and everything. All right, so let's give it a shot. So if I hit play, I get my title sequence. Now if I shake it, I get the random shuffle. Everything's shuffling, everything's moving. This is exactly what we want. Then they should disappear for roughly 3 seconds. Then we'll get a message code, and then we'll get our random monster. So what I mean by adjusting the code, so maybe if you are like, oh, there's a gap right here between the head and the neck, maybe you could go into that peacock body here, and maybe that Y should be like 105 or something like that, or 110. I don't know exactly, but that's where they can go and adjust some of these variables. Now I want to point out one other thing. Watch what happens if I shake it again. Notice my peacock stays where it was because that one was already stagnant and it's still looking at the old code. So in this game, if you want to make a new monster, you have to stop it and restart it. So I'll hit the stop and then I'll hit start again, and then we're back to square one. I can start shaking at any point and now they all shuffle again. So make sure they stop their game and start it again in order to get the full effect of the game. If you want to add a sound effect, oh, that's better with a peacock. Notice that? So if you want to add a sound effect, what you can do is you can put it in one spot. So maybe what you want to do is in your boss legs, as we'll call them, you can add a sound effect right here. So maybe we'll say play sound effect, and we'll say ta-da, which is a good one. Okay. All right. And I'd love to do and continue. Usually that's what you want. So let's hit play again. Let's see if the sound effect shows up. Shake. And we should get a ta-da. There we go. Alien Fairy Zombie. So that is the Monster Lab. Hopefully you all enjoyed. Probably one of the more difficult ones for younger kids, so break it down into steps and walk them through it. Thanks for watching.